The state legislature got down to hard work this week, advancing several controversial bills that have sparked intense debate, and that vote-by-mail bill is just one of them.
And there are bills that zero in on protests and limit your right to sue for COVID negligence, and one that might overturn the voice of voters in Key West. State Senator Annette Taddeo is a Democrat from Southwest Miami-Dade. State Representative Chip LaMarca is a Republican from Northeast Broward, both friends of This Week in South Florida.
Hey.
Great to see you both, and
good
thank
morning.
you for your time this weekend.
Good morning.
Great to see you both. Chip LaMarca, you just heard Christina White, the election supervisor in Miami-Dade, talk about why she thinks that Senate Bill 90, this bill that would change the vote-by-mail regulations, is probably not needed. What's your view?
I appreciate Supervisor White's good work down in Miami-Dade, but remember, I'm in Broward County where we had to accept the resignation of Dr. Snipes, and the governor had to make an appointment, and we got through a great election in Broward this time. But I'm looking at this bill and trying to make an assessment. As you know, Michael, I'm somewhat independent and don't always vote with my party, but I think ballot security and election security is very important. When I was on the county commission, we voted to extend early voting. We also voted to pay for the postage for mail-in ballots. So I trust the voters, but I want to make sure that the voters are the ones that have the ballots.
You know, something that we didn't talk about in the last segment is the county commissioner, Raquel Regalado, had put forth this suggestion, well, maybe this bill, if it passes, should just start later, maybe start in July instead of immediately, to pave the way for the voters in the cities that Michael had mentioned. Annette, do you back any of this? Could you see a way forward and tightening voting, even though there hasn't been a problem yet, and finding that solution so that everybody gets what they want?
As Vice Chair of Ethics and Elections in the Senate, I objected to this bill quite strongly. And frankly, it's because it seems like it's all of a sudden the Democrats have gotten really good at vote by mail, which historically has been the Republicans. And now that we have the re-election of Governor DeSantis, now they want to crack down on all these people voting by mail. What a concept. In a democracy, we should be encouraging everybody to vote, not afraid. And look, fair and square, Donald Trump won Florida, and that's just what it is. But they couldn't even tell us of one instance where there was a problem with voting by mail in the whole state of Florida, let alone in South Florida, where the majority of the Democrats are. So this is all about suppressing the vote. And frankly, I agree with Raquel Regalado, and I actually think it's a void of a contract, because they have signed, the voters that signed up have signed and said they're going to get it for 2 years. And now does that open each of these supervisors to a lawsuit because they're not fulfilling on that contract? And furthermore, it's an unfunded mandate because the bill has zero money behind it, and every single county, as much as $500,000 is going to have to be spent, for example, in Miami-Dade County.
Let me just ask you a follow-up to something you said. If this comes to pass and the supervisors of elections have to now redo sending out all of the ballot requests, all the voters have to request ballots again, it's a mess all the way around. But doesn't it affect voters who are Democrat and voters who are Republican the same way?
100%. It affects both. But the fact is, this last election, we saw a huge number of Democrats vote by mail, mainly because of COVID, and Democrats just really made it an effort to get people to come out to vote by mail because we were concerned, and a lot more Democrats were concerned about standing in line and the mask and these kinds of things. So again, we can't find one instance where there was any problem. Governor DeSantis went on national media tour talking about how Florida should be the model for the nation. Well, we agree. It went really well. We didn't win. Let's be real. But this is all about his reelection and making sure he suppresses Democratic votes.
Yeah. Chip LaMarca, let me ask you about a bill that went through a committee this week up in Tallahassee. In the House, I believe, it would provide legal immunity to businesses that provided goods, services during the pandemic, and somebody who believed that they were treated negligently, that they had some harm done to them by the business. Now it would be much harder for those people to sue. The bill would change the standard of evidence from the preponderance of the evidence to clear and convincing, so it would be harder to sue a business where you believe you may have, had some harm from their actions. Why is this needed? Do you support this?
I supported it, but Michael, it's important to point out that it was a bipartisan bill. Eight members of the Democrat Party in the Florida House supported it, and I was very, very proud to vote on something that had good bipartisan support. Really, we have to look out for our businesses as we come back, and our consumers. But at the end of the day, the last thing I want to see is anyone take advantage of all of the other issues that a business has to go through to stay open, and folks can patronize it. But last thing I want to see is more opportunity for certain litigation to attack our small businesses. That's what makes up our community. And I did support the bill. I was proud to support the bill, and I was proud to vote with 8 Democrats.
So what is it in the bill then, if this bill gives this liability protection to businesses? And now there are 2 bills, one for businesses and government and educational facilities and religious facilities, and the other for hospitals and nursing homes. All of these entities in these 2 bills get this protection. What is it that protects the consumer from being able to file a legitimate grievance for harm?
Look, at the end of the day, if someone walks in the front door of a small business and say it's our business, or a small restaurant or small retail shop, and that business is not being compliant, not being following CDC guidelines, not being health and safety aware for their patrons and their customers, they should be susceptible to a lawsuit, or they should be in that situation. But we want to make sure that one in 100-year pandemic doesn't open the door for litigation that really is could cause runaway issues. Florida's doing better now than they were just 2 years ago when we were called a legal hellhole, unfortunately. And from a tax and regulatory environment, we're a great place to come, and people are coming here. The last thing we want to do is have someone open a business and then be exposed to runaway litigation for a number of issues. And it was pointed out that there were very few cases so far. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that the very smart attorneys in the state of Florida aren't looking at this as a cottage industry like so many other things. So I think this is just a protection to make sure that during the pandemic, if someone followed the CDC guidelines and they were looking out for their patrons and their customers, that they won't be hit with false lawsuits based on the pandemic.
Yeah, Senator Taddeo, let me ask you to comment about this, because on the nursing homes, hospitals, medical providers, over the last 11 months, Local 10 News, other media have reported instances where these long-term care facilities especially were very lax in their rules. They allowed vendors, other people who came in who brought the coronavirus with them. Under this law, if it's passed, the people who lost a loved one would really have no avenue, or it would be very hard for them to go and sue one of these nursing homes.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, as a small business owner myself, I actually understand some of the good qualities of this bill. But when we asked in committee, for example, this past week in the Senate, even to add a simple sign to let people know that they're walking into a place that's taking advantage of this statute and they're not liable should you catch COVID. I mean, even something as simple as that was not acceptable to the ones proposing the bill. So I just really think that we're trying to fix something that, first of all, doesn't exist. Representative LaMarca just said that there has been really no cases. We only know of one in particular where a gentleman died in Miami Beach because Publix wouldn't let him wear the mask. But we do not know of many cases. And frankly, let's not try to fix something that we don't have a problem with. But at the same time, let's not go so far that, as you brought up, Michael, we have the issue of the nursing homes and people worried about their loved ones and finding out information. And even you, the media, haven't been able to get a lot of information. So let's not go too far in protecting small business and then in the process protect all these big businesses when they're truly at fault.
There are bills about ports. There are bills about protests. We get into all of that when we come right back. Sit tight. We'll see you in 2.
We are glad you are with us today on This Week in South Florida. We are speaking with two prominent members of the state legislature, which is in session. State Senator Annette Taddeo of South Miami-Dade and Chip LaMarca, state representative from Lighthouse Point. Chip LaMarca, let me ask you about a bill that has been introduced. This is very early. Carl Hyacin wrote a great column about it. Today's Miami Herald. The bill would nullify the results of a referendum and election in Key West last fall, where Key West voters said they wanted to limit the number and size of cruise ships that visit Key West on any given day. Apparently people got a little tired of 6,000 people, trudging up and down Duval Street during the day, disrupting their lives. But now there is a bill that would overturn, nullify that election. Where do you stand on that?
Well, Michael, I have to start out by saying that I saw that bill in my committee, the vice chair of tourism, infrastructure, and energy, and I thought from the beginning that the bill lacked some consideration for the other 14 seaports in the state of Florida. So separate from the referendum, what the bill did is would have attacked the other 14 seaports that were not run by municipalities. And what we did is work bipartisan legislation in that, basically amendments to try to fix the bill. And what we did is pull out Port Everglades, my home port, Port Miami, Senator Taddeo's home port, and a dozen other ports out of the state of Florida from the bill. I don't know if it'll get through the next committee or not. It had a lot of consternation and concern. A lot of points were made that the bill sponsor, as much as he had his reasons for running it, might not have taken into account when they brought it forward, but ultimately it left tourism infrastructure as probably a better bill, and if it gets through the next stop, ultimately I'll see it on the House floor. I don't know if I'll support it or not.
Chip, you're talking about process here, which is fine. You've got to be involved in that. I mean, bottom line, the will of the people of Key West was expressed in a vote. They said, we don't want these big cruise ships, especially don't want the ones that pollute, and now the will of the people may be nullified. Where's the sense in that?
Well, there's a lot of things went into that. First thing I did on that bill is speak to Representative Mooney, who represents House District 120, which is all the Florida Keys. Got his thoughts on it. I agree with you that the home rule is important and the ability to self-govern is important. Ultimately, there were some issues there where, quite honestly, the Port of Key West and those peers have taken a lot of state money and federal money in infrastructure. I agree with you on parts of it. Parts of it really would have destroyed the state's port system, which is where we get our fuel, our cargo, and as well as tourism. So we're going to keep an eye on it in its next committee stop. And if I get to see it again, like I said, I don't know that I could support it. What we did in our committee is try to make it the best it could be for the rest of the ports in the state of Florida. I know your thought is on the municipality of Key West, and I have some serious thoughts about that as well. But we can get deeper into the fact that folks that run a business in Key West a lot of times don't live on that key; they live on another key, and they had no ability to vote on that as well.
Annette, can you I want you to weigh in on that, but do you know the whole point of that bill to begin with? If all of the big ports and the big municipalities are taken out?
But I would like to weigh in the sense that, I think Tallahassee just has a hearing problem. Our voters keep telling us what they want us to do. We put it out to a referendum. What a concept in a democracy to ask people what they think. They vote, they tell us what they think, and then it goes to Tallahassee. For example, the minimum wage overwhelmingly passed. What are we doing in Tallahassee? We're trying to say, people who were formerly incarcerated shouldn't make $15 an hour. People who are under 21 shouldn't make $15 an hour. Come on, the voters know what they're voting for. They're smart. Let's treat them as the adults that they are when they vote, and let's stop pretending like they don't know any better, and we in Tallahassee are somehow going to fix it. We have a hearing problem in Tallahassee.
Okay, Chip, maybe what was the point of writing that bill if it weren't directed toward Key West's port? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, my thought from after speaking to the bill sponsor and have the opportunity early on, but we had a lot of words in committee. I don't know what the impetus obviously was. It was aimed towards Key West, but why would you drag in the other 14 seaports in the state of Florida when so much of our economy coming out of the coronavirus comes from our seaports. I spent 8 years in the county commission, and Port Everglades is under our Broward County Commission. It's a tremendous economic engine. I had major issues with that bill, like I said, and what our fight at that point was to pull out as much of this as possible and deal with the root issue, and that is apparently that House member has some type of issue with TWISF.
To you both, you're experienced legislators. Chip, you were on the Broward County Commission for years, and Annette, you've been involved in government. Maybe people at home don't understand the early days of the state legislature are sort of like the Broadway show that has tryouts in Philly or Boston. They make all these changes and the show gets to Broadway. It can be quite different. So all the bills we're talking about, if they succeed, will be changed before, the end of April. My point is that the people of Florida are really concerned about COVID, about taxes, about insurance costs, and so on. Where is the discussion up there about those things?
Well, Michael, you made a great point. Talking about COVID and taxes and our economy and attacking 15 of our Florida seaports is not the way to come out of a pandemic and an economic crisis. If you give me a second, my whole slate of bills really is about economic development and bringing jobs back to Florida, keeping Florida's revenue, whether it's online sales tax, the Qualified Targeted Industries program with DEO, bringing business here. And I'm also sponsoring a bipartisan sports wagering bill that includes one of our House members from Broward, Representative Omfroy. And ultimately, if this passes, we'll be able to keep these revenues in Florida and not send them to Europe or the Caribbean or other U.S. states.
Annette, for time, you get the last word on that. Go ahead.
Well, I rather than talk about all the bipartisan, but I know Chip LaMarca and I work on really strongly, I'm going to talk about our priorities. Our governor has set the priorities, and they're not COVID. They're not vaccines. They're not, really, they seem to be, meat issues with regards to the base. When it comes to, this bill about protesting, it's outrageous. All kinds of bills that really have nothing to do with the emergency we're currently dealing with. And that should be our priority. And I think Representative LaMarca and I would agree and work together on that. But instead, we're fighting these fights that have nothing to do with regular people and what they're dealing with right now. Unemployment being number one. We should be fixing it. And instead, there's not one bill in the House of Representatives to fix the broken unemployment system and to fix the fact that the law just sucks, pardon my word.
The worst part of politics is politics. So thank you both, Annette Taddeo, Chip LaMarca. Great to see you, and we do value your time this weekend.
We do indeed.